Hey guys, Thomas Cecilia Jr. here, aka Mustached Tom, here for another retrospective review. This time we're going to be covering Digimon Data Squad, or Digimon Season 5. If you end up enjoying this full retrospective review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And fourth to my Discord server, you can join, collab, and chill and do all that cool stuff. And chilling will be reminded at the end of the review. With all that out of the way, let's get into Digimon Data Squad. So, Digimon Season 5, or Digimon Data Squad, of course, as many other previous seasons, has a new line of characters. That this time in tow, we have Marcus, Thomas, and Yoshi. And their respected partners, and Marcus being Agumons, Thomas being Gaomons, and Yoshi being Lalamons. And I do think that the gimmick portion of it seems to be more in line with the story rather than the types of Digilutions, well, to a degree anyways. It seems like they wanted to go back, at least for the most part, to quote-unquote normal or maybe more traditional Digivolutions. And they did a slight shift in that, the way that Marcus would achieve that, at least initially. But outside of that, the gimmick, as I mentioned, more so seemed to be more in line with the universe, world, and story that they wanted to tell, that being, in this version of Digimon, that Digimon and humans would already be in the human world and working together, at least in this company, well, organization, whatever you would want to call it, that was, well, called the Data Squad. And ran with this idea. And of course, this can all be traced back to even Season 3, as I mentioned earlier, Digimon's best season, with the organization run by the antagonist in that group, at least initially. And this time around, we are now following what happens when the protagonists now have their hands on this type of system, where they're now teaming up with Digimon that are tamed already, and furthermore are now capturing wild Digimon and placing them back into the digital world, and making sure that outside of the ones that are, in this organization are kept under, scrutiny, or just placed back so they're not causing any further chaos. And with that, we now have the essential premise for our story, in which we follow Marcus as our main character. And I think this was, at least after the fact, in retrospective looks at it, I think this is the first time I had recognized the voice actor outside of something of Digimon, that I could be like, oh, that's that character from that thing that's not Digimon, that being Marcus's voice actor, at least in the English, because all of these have been in the English voice acting, in Quentin Flynn, who is, I also know as Raiden from the Metal Gear series. I believe the director in this series, as well as another famous actor, but I don't know the actor's official name, but I believe he voice acts either someone in Persona as well as maybe Lubu, if I remember correctly. I'm not too familiar with the other voice actor's actual name, so I do apologize on not looking that up beforehand, but regardless, moving right along, this time around we follow this Marcus, who is, not so surprisingly, the hot-headed, naive type, which seems to ebb and flow from our main protagonist always being either some form of courageous, whether that just be pure courageous, or more naive, or more stubborn. That can allude to Davis, and maybe even some, some of the other tamers as well beforehand. So keeping in line with that sort of similar energy, but I do think that they wanted to have a more vintage anime edge with this, even though Digimon has always been an anime in retrospect, but I think that they wanted to approach it with more of a shonen anime specifically. That in lies where Marcus's ability to digivolve his Agumon comes in through the power of his punching, at least again initially. This Agumon, by the way, is obviously a very different Agumon, or at least different enough, with the red gloves to indicate visually that he's different, and also the voice actor is different here as well. So it's not the typical Agumon voice actor. He sounds like more like this. Hey, boss! Something around that range. I can't do it quite as well as my original Agumon voice, but you get the drift. Point being that Marcus is the outsider, tough, naive, brash, always willing to get in a fight, and the others, or at least Yoshi's, excuse me, has already been contacted to reprimand this Agumon. And lo and behold, in the first episode, these two are fighting, and they have gained each other's respect through the power of fighting, with, answering the age-old question, why do we fight? You've got to fight that answer. To find that answer, excuse me. Sort of the shtick here. And I will say, I do have quite an had a re-enjoyment of watching Marcus in action, and just having that ability to punch his way through Digimon. It's definitely slightly different in that regard. But then it follows from that point as pretty traditional Digimon stories go. That being, saving the world, etc., etc. And both worlds, obviously, end up being in the balance. And each season, with probably the only being the prior to have Digimon and Tamers be the same thing, so it was really hard to choose, which Digimon I would have picked to be my favorite in that, since I would also have to simultaneously thought of who's my favorite Tamer in that one. Here, this time around, I think it should be no surprise that in terms of character writing, and in terms of development in that regard, it's actually not any of the characters you see on this poster. It actually is in the form of Falcomon and his human partner, Keenan. Once again, doing a whole new gimmick, or storyline, through a Digimon and a human this time around. So, in this instance, what makes Keenan so interesting is that he was actually born in the digital world, which hasn't been done before in terms of that whole shtick. And due to this, his English, for whatever reason, I'm not sure even why, because Digimon do speak English, technically speaking, or at least in English dub, but his English tends to be, at least initially, way more broken than most. And he's resided in the digital world since, being a child to being a, slightly older child. And I mean a baby child to being, 11 or 12-ish, around that age range. And he is discovered in the human, or digital world, rather. And it is the whole ordeal of having this completely identifying crisis of being one that was, believed to have been so long essentially adopted by a Digimon, is the best way I can put this. So yeah, it definitely brings adoption back into the equation, which again hasn't been a topic point since the original Digimon, Digimon Season 1 with Izzy, if you remember that character. It's been a while. Just thought I'd bring that up. So, again, they're bringing up these other topics that may hit different demographics or different individuals very differently. And this sort of even different style of learning is definitely what pulls Keenan apart away from that, which makes him that much more compelling. And that he truly does believe that he is a Digimon. And when that confrontation comes to head, when he keeps being repeatedly told that you're also a human, it now becomes a shift of he starts to recognize that he is a human, but still with the quote unquote spirit of a Digimon, as it were. Uh, and that distinction definitely raises some interesting elements of, like, if you were adopted into, relatively early on, and you were very clearly different from the people around you, but you were treated as if you were the same as them, is sort of like the premise that they're trying to reach for with this type of character. So it's a very niche type of character, but I do think that the appeal of it definitely resonates really heavily still. More so than any of the other characters in Digimon Data Squad. That's why I would pick him to be my favorite, is that just like any other characters I have always picked to be my favorite, it's always with the character and or premise that seems to stick out more so than any other, which is why you get the characters like Impmon that are my favorite Argodamon in Season 1. So yes, that is definitely where that goes. This time around, obviously we're sticking to a more inhuman parts, so kind of hitting on the Season 3 of aspect of, at least initially for a while here in Digimon Data Squad, which again turns down the scale to a degree. I feel as if that is consistent through both this and here as well in Data Squad. This, again, smaller scale that expands so much when, again, it explodes into, both of the worlds are now in danger, etc., etc., when that finally hits. Interestingly enough, in terms of little interesting, I suppose, nuggets of information, in terms of popularized Digimon, or perhaps more Digimon, I guess deeper fan may recognize some of these terms. Perhaps this would be the first full introduction of all of the Royal Knights. For those of you who do not know, I believe there's either 12 or 13. I want to say 13 Royal Knights that are accumulated of 13 different Digimon. The first in which being Omegamon, and then you have Alphamon, and, if you're not a fan of Digimon, you probably don't even know either of those names unless you look them up. It's sort of that sort of deal. But this is the first time that you get a look at all 13 of them. And the reasoning for this is that when both the worlds are at risk, they are there to sort of evaluate which side, because there's this whole war aspect between the humans and Digimon that is also at the crux, and Keenan again is sort of like the pin point of that the entire crux of this, because he has lived both of those lifestyles, and now that there's this war that is diverging between the digital world and human world, it is up to our fellow tamers to convince these Royal Knights that they are indeed in the prospect of helping both worlds essentially break through, instead of humans typically being selfishly desired, or in this case the main antagonist here is more so in line with wiping out all Digimon life forms, because they are seen as monster or other. So again, hitting on even the broader themes in tow with everything else within Digimon Data Squad is sort of the thread and needle, as it were, when it comes to the writing aspect of this season. So I do think that what season 3 allowed is for a tighter knit of like the premises or the gimmicks or premises sort of being better tight niched together for later seasons 4 and 5 seem to be respected coming from off of season 3, because they were so much harder to gauge like what sort of the different little breaks in the arcs were, especially again this time around. It is really hard to tell. I would probably say, I guess the first arc would be them facing off against their initial enemy, I guess, technically speaking, which is like this Bancho Leomon or whatever he's called. He's like Bagra Leomon or something. I forgot what like he's like something Leomon. Anyway, point being is that it does start from there, but he does stick around even after he's defeated, and indeed, at least for a little bit. And indeed, there is certain things you can even pull from, and one of the ending arcs is actually a lot easier to pull out once you see what it is, but even initially seeing it, it's like, I wonder where this is going. But then you initially then see Marcus's father, and then it becomes crystal clear once you hear the voice, and it doesn't match what you would expect from all the memories you were seeing from Marcus's perspective. And that being that Marcus's father has been possessed by this data evil generic sort of old school type of destroy everything type of enemy, and that the real Marcus had been this Bancho Leomon that comes in and trains them to a degree, I guess is the best way of putting it, or like just being there like this sort of weird mentor type. And again, just fighting and punching to find that answer. So, yeah, I would say that Digimon Data Squad definitely still has some of the deeper themes, and it's sort of, again, interluding some of the already the consistent broader themes of Digimon as well, which shouldn't surprise anyone at this point. So yeah, I would say this one actually holds up a little bit stronger from what I can remember the first time initially watching it. And maybe that's because of the bad taste of the game that unfortunately, pivoted from this series, which is, for those of you who don't know, a little game that actually came out a long time ago at this point, Digimon Masters Online, which is a game, unbelievably, that is a pay-to-win game that is still running somehow, some way. That game's still chugging along, and I've checked in just to see it chugging along, so yes, that game is still very much alive, and it has been like a decade's worth of time that game has been out by now. So yeah, that is a pretty lengthy time shelf to be an online game and still be chugging along. I will say, not a lot of online games last that long, at least from my memory. Like, there's probably WoW that has lasted that long, there's probably Diablo that's lasted that long, and I'm talking about Diablo 2, by the way, if you want to know what I'm talking about specifically, because, Diablo 3 threw people off, and then it got downslid, and people, I don't know what the whole vibe of Diablo 4 is right now, but it seems like there's still even some hesitance, especially towards that price point. I don't know anything about the story or anything like that, so I can't comment on any of that. Regardless, Digimon Masters Online has definitely lived a much longer life cycle than I would have ever thought, especially being a disgusting pay-to-win game. And I mean disgusting. It's not even, favorably, like something affordable. It's just like, ooh, they just ripping whales apart. The metaphorical whales. I'm talking about the ones with a lot of that cash money. Anyway, getting back to the series, it is interesting seeing the sort of more. I don't know if it's interesting. It's a bit more, I guess, casual approach to this. There's this whole like, or at least earlier on, there's the whole like secret identity thing, or like trying to hide your Digimon. This time around, when it's revealed, the two that live with Marcus, anyways, they're pretty chill about Agumon just being there, and she just like starts cooking for him. So they're just like being like, yeah, we're going past that whole like the initial freak out stage. We're just gonna skip over that whole bit at this point. We know that you're used to it by now. So I don't know. I think there's something to that, I guess, in a meta sense, anyways. But in terms of like in series, it's a little bit wonky, I guess. Anyway, so things that I think could have been improved upon. There is definitely a shift between the Digimon and Tamers once again, since they're separated once again. So I do like the concept that Agumon and Marcus clash, or more so that they have a more unique sort of working system in comparison to any previous iteration, and that being, instead of like pure friends, anyways. Well, I mean, I know that they are, but it's just that Agumon just particularly always refers to Marcus as a boss, and that is something that he establishes right off the cuff. In fact, that seems to be almost like a very similar gimmick to Gaomon in how he refers to Thomas as a sir. There almost does seem to be, at least with the two of them, this sort of like hierarchy a little bit, which is a little bit which did throw me a little bit off. This whole sir and boss aspect to Digimon. I don't know if I'm as much as a fan of this in terms of like how they are responding to each other. In fact, if there was one thing I would have changed, and it does seem to at least happen with Agumon a little bit here towards the end, is I think he does actually just stick to boss. I don't know if he ever switches to just saying Marcus or friend or whatever. So that's something, if I were in charge of this series, I think I would have, stretched and tested and, sort of messed with and seeing how those dynamics could shift from, this sort of, again, this hierarchy system that seems to be ingrained in the naming system to being on equal footing, which seems to be more in line with where Digimon ought to be, and where typically it is in any previous season anyway. So again, that is sort of something that was a little bit off-putting and on repeat viewing, is hearing those phrases and sort of analyzing like this hierarchy system that doesn't seem to gel as well with Digimon as, say, other things. At any rate, other things I would have changed or perhaps altered. I'd probably say not too many things. Again, the Falcomon and Keenan storyline are very, again, they're sort of like the pin, the heart, as it were, the hidden heart, because we don't even know that those characters, at least initially, are going to be a part of this thing, linchpin of the entire season. And I do think that that is in certain levels of respect to the writing, where a character can come in and become sort of this deep linchpin that's so integral to everything, and have it still be a character. It's still a character at the end of the day. It's not like this MacGuffin, essentially. And I like that it never approaches that level of, just forgetting that Keenan is a character. They keep him at the forefront as soon as he's introduced as such a vital part of the show. Um, so yeah, the whole punching thing, I think it's a bit, fun. It's a fun gimmick to return to. Uh, and again, it does derive more from the more classic ways of Digimon. So I think if you have not seen Digimon Data Squad, I would definitely say check it out. I think it still holds up. Again, a little bit better from what I would have remembered. And again, the things I would change are becoming less and less about like how many things I would pull away or add on to uh, a show like this. Because again, I think that the seasons 4 and 5 in particular have taken a lot from, say, season, again, 3, which was, like, again, the pinnacle of Digimon. So, I'm not even here to say that this season's even remotely that bad. I wouldn't even say it's not even that far removed from season 3. It's just that season 3 just hits on such a deeper and way more emotional toll than either 4 or seasons 4 and 5 are concerned. That is where season 3 really truly shines in its writing, is that it is able to hit that deeper emotional impact through its story and writing. But I digress. So, obviously, we'll be continuing our retrospective review, as again, we'll be catching up to the current Digimon, that is Digimon Ghost Game. So, next up will be Digimon Season 6. Or Digimon, the beginning of Digimon Cross Wars, which, just so people are prepared, I believe this is where people started to say that this was the fall of Digimon. So that one should be really interesting to cover in terms of where I think it is in terms of a retrospective review, where you're looking at it, saying how well it turned out, and so on and so forth. But for, again, Digimon Data Squad, I do believe that this one does hold up fairly well. Again, really strong, or at least fairly strong enough to, if you're not into, if you've never seen Digimon before, and this is one of the beautiful things about Digimon, you can jump in at any season and just be like, yeah, I'm just going to watch this season of Digimon, because except for Digimon Season 1 and 2, because those are the only two that are connected in any significant way, and even in that, there is the passing of the torch, so it's still that level of, like, they're pulling it apart, So, yeah, there's a definitely easy entry to any Digimon season for the most part. So, yeah, there's always that to say with in regards to any Digimon season. And with that, that is my full review to Digimon Data Squad, or Digimon Season 5. And if you ended up enjoying this retrospective review, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description. One will head you over to my petition to help out smaller YouTubers. Second and third to my Patreon and PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly. And fourth to my Discord server you could join, collab, and chill and do a lot of cool stuff. And until next time, everyone, bye-bye.